What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
How are you all? I hope you all are doing good. We're just kind of chilling over here in this really chaotic world that I can't stand. Yay! Just so much bullshit going on in the world, and it just makes every day hard. Any update I have right now, I have one singular update, and this is on the case out of Walla Walla with the 3 little girls who were murdered by their father. They did test the blood they found. Remember we talked about the bloody handprints.
It was male blood.
It was male blood along with animal blood. And
did you know they found his dog?
And you
alive?
Yes. I was going to say they found his dog also alive at the campground. Some people are kind of speculating that maybe the dog attacked him when he tried to hurt his children. I'm actually thinking a little bit more outside the box. I'm actually thinking maybe he killed an animal and used the animal to blood to, sounds disgusting, but to put on his body to disguise his scent if they were to send out dogs, scent sniffing dogs.
If he's in survival mode, that would make sense.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I think. I think there's a chance that he killed an animal and tried to because again, you got to remember he's a military person, so he obviously has some survival instincts like that. But I'm thinking that it's not his dog's blood, I don't think, because they never said anything about his dog being hurt or anything. But there was definitely some sort of...
They should be able to determine what animal it is.
They just didn't say what it was.
Oh.
But I'm just thinking in my mind, I'm thinking if he's hiding.
They keep saying that they're closer and closer to getting him.
That's
I don't know
what I
that
hear.
Means, but
I saw that they said that
brought it to the FBI
they had
now.
some sightings of him, of people who had seen him. They actually thought they had seen him at one point. I mean, I do think he'll get found. He can't live forever in the woods. He just can't.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is how much manpower can we send and continue to fund to go there? That's where the issue is. I do have hope that he is caught. And but like I said, I'm starting to wonder if the blood, again, because I said the bloody handprints do not make sense to me. But now I'm thinking, well, now that they found animal blood with it, maybe he did something and did it to disguise himself. I don't know. But so that's the most updates I have. He's still not found, and they are searching high and low for him. They are using, I think they're using people, but I think they're also using dogs, and I think they're also using drones and helicopters to try to find heat signals and stuff in the woods. Cause but if he's got the other thing I saw was somebody was on his computer, they found searches for how to live in Canada. And so a lot of people are oh, he's headed to Canada. And I'm over here going, is he? Again, this is somebody who is literally trained by the military to evade.
Yeah, if I'm in survival mode, I'm going to research things that make you guys go one direction. I'm going to go the fucking opposite.
That's what I think. I think
that'd be the smartest move, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think he Google search, because again, some of his searches were how do you get to Canada? How do you live in Canada? Those are they're so common sense.
Canada heavy.
Yeah, and they're also very common sense questions. It's very simple. You literally go to the border and apply to be in the country. It's not that fucking difficult. And so to me, I'm going, that just seems too easy. And as somebody who in my brain, I'm I don't know, man. I don't know. I just think that I think it was calculated. I think everything he's doing is very calculated. And I just we'll see. I don't know. Anyways, that's all I have to say about that. Okay, so part of the reason that I brought that up is because what we're talking about today has to do with similar, not exactly the same, but the whole not cadaver dogs, dogs and searching for somebody. We're kind of talking about that. So what we're talking about is a couple of things. So in 1997, there was a woman named Amy Harrison, and she was raped. But her rape goes unsolved for a very long time. Then in 2017, a man named James Appleton is murdered. And these both happen in Arkansas. And all of them are linked to one person named Grant Hardin. Now, I'm going to just preface this. Grant Hardin, if it sounds familiar, it is because he just recently escaped from jail.
But they caught him, right?
Yes, but
he didn't get that far.
No, but I do talk about the escape, but I'm just saying, so that actually is why I was oh, this is kind of, talking about searching for somebody, they searched for him. But I'm going to give you kind of the background and details of what he was in jail for. And we will talk about the escape as well.
Also, if you hear snoring, Olive is right underneath my mom's microphone. So we'll try to keep her quiet, but no guarantee.
Apologies, but I'm not going to make her move because she's a tired lady. Amy Harrison. We're going to talk just a smidgen about Amy and a smidgen about James, and then we'll get into Grant. So Amy Harrison, she was actually living in Rogers, Arkansas with her husband, and her husband was a police officer. She was a school teacher at Frank Tilley Elementary. She also was attending night classes at the University of Arkansas, and she was hoping to become an attorney. I don't have much about like her background or anything like that. I'm just giving you who she was, who she is. And her and her husband had moved to Arkansas. They didn't like grow up there or anything like that. She is part of, there is a documentary which I definitely did watch, and that is called Devil in the Ozarks, and she's like one of the main people in the movie Devil in the Ozarks. That's just really hard for me to say for some reason. I don't know why.
Because it sounds like it should be devils in the Ozark.
I know, but it's one person, so it's devil. Like, I don't fucking know. Anyways, so she is in that, and she actually talks about her rape and all these things about it. So, like, again, I wasn't going to dig too much into her background. I don't like digging that much into the victims' backgrounds because I feel like it's really intrusive. If I'm being honest with you, the reason I focus always on the perpetrator is because that's what we're talking about. I'm talking about this to talk about the person or the perpetrator who did this. But I always feel like when I dig too far into the background of a victim, I'm not trying to be intrusive into their life. You don't know how much of their personal life they want shared. So I only share with you what I can find with a very simple search of who they are. That is all I share with you. So for Amy Harrison, the only things I found is what I just told you, the most very basic information. So that is Amy Harrison. And then James Appleton. He was born November 14th, 1957 in Merriam, Kansas. And he was described as a kind, bright, and caring person by pretty much anybody who knew him. Now, he finished school in 1975, which he graduated from Southwest High School. And he spends over 27 years at Emerson Electric as a supervisor. He then goes on and spends another 12 years as a carpenter. And then sometime in the 2010s, he actually he gets a job at the Gateway Rural Water Authority Company. And that's where he actually settles into the job. He makes his home in Arkansas, just kind of living his life. He's like an older gentleman. Okay, that's just who he is. Now, Grant Hardin. Grant Hardin's the one we're actually talking about. So I have a little bit more information about Grant. So Grant was born December 6th, 1968 in Bentonville, Arkansas. Fun fact, when I was a kid, we almost moved to Bentonville, Arkansas.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
I could not see you guys as a fucking Arkansas family.
I'm serious because Bentonville, Arkansas is actually where the main distribution center for Walmart is. And my dad was a bread man growing up, and they were thinking about putting like a part of his company there where he would work directly with the Walmarts, and we would have had to move there.
Thank God you didn't.
So there's that. He spent most of his childhood in a place called Pea Ridge, Kansas, and he attended school in the Pea Ridge School District, and he graduated from the Pea Ridge School District, and he went on to actually study at the University of Arkansas. He attended there for 2 years, but he never actually got the degree. No judgment. People do that all the time.
Bruh, me. Literally me.
I wasn't going to point it out. I wasn't going to point it out.
2 years and never fucking graduated.
Now, Grant had multiple jobs throughout his life. So pay attention to the jobs that he had. So first, he worked for Full Brands Corporation in Rogers, Arkansas. He then worked at Empire Seed Company. Then he moved on and worked at Walmart's Regional Distribution Center in Bentonville. He also worked at UPS during the holidays as a driver helper. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the people during the holidays, UPS, because they have so many deliveries, they have a driver.
They're seasonal employees.
Yeah, and they have somebody who sits in
Amazon
there,
does it.
And they just run packages to the houses.
Yeah, they still do that shit now. Like FedEx, Amazon,
yeah,
UPS,
they every
USPS,
season. Yeah.
Like everybody does it.
Now Grant lived
I think even fucking snail mail does it.
Oh, they might. Grant lived in Pea Ridge until about 1990. So he was doing all those jobs, going back and forth to these places, all while he's pretty much living in Pea Ridge. And then he moves moves with a friend to Fayetteville. Now, Grant also participates in multiple organizations throughout his educational years. So these are all the things he was part of, which I'm just sitting here. I'm trying to figure out what went wrong with this guy. So throughout his educational years, this could literally be from elementary school all the way through high school and partly in college. He was part of the National Beta Club, the National Honor Society, the Student Council, the Future Farmers of America, Future Business Leaders of America, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and Reserve Officer Training Course. Like, he did a lot of stuff. Why are you laughing at Future Farmers of America? FFA? What the fuck are you laughing at?
That seems funny.
Why is that funny?
Because I didn't grow up in a school that had FFA. Fuck, I don't even think we had ROTC.
Oh my God, I just realized that's what Reserve Officer Training Course stands for.
You didn't know that? Yeah, that's why I was like, yeah, ROTC.
I didn't even... My cousin went in ROTC. I had no idea that's what it stood for.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, light bulb. Like, what the fuck? Anyways, Future Farmers of America is a good thing. Honestly, it is. When we had the coffee bar, there was a woman who ran Future Farmers of America for one of the local high school and like middle schools. And they teach these kids some shit. So, I mean, it's not a bad program. To be honest, when I was in high school, we didn't have Future Farmers of America, but we did have Future Homemakers of America or something. Because it was like, I don't remember what
it actually shocks me that when
not where we lived, not where I lived. I mean, we had farmland where I lived, but not.
Yeah, there were a lot of yeehaws.
Not really. Not when I was in high school. But when I was in, towards the end of my middle school, I joined this like Future Homemakers of America club, which was an after school thing. And we learned how to cook and sew. I'm not even playing with you.
Bullshit you did.
I'm dead serious. Ask my mom. I made a pillow for her, for God's sakes.
Well, then you did not take it with you into adulthood.
No, I can sew. I can sew. But the thing is...
Then why does all of our shit go to Dad?
Because your dad sews like a fucking boss, and he sews really...
And why is it that when Dad cooks, Dad's cooking is always really good?
I can't cook for shit. I can bake, but I can't cook for shit. But
see, I can cook.
Sewing, I can't sew a very good straight line, and I'm slow at it. Whereas your dad can sew.
I would hope that Dad would be a good sewer.
Yeah, he can
based
sew.
On his job.
He can sew a straight line, and he can sew really fast. And for those of you who want to be intrusive, I'm not telling you what he does because he's on Fatal Blend and he doesn't want his shit known out there. But his job is the reason he knows how to sew. And no, he's not a seamstress. Mind your business,
a lot better
people.
Than that.
Yeah, he's got a good ass job that taught him a lot of shit. But mind your business. You don't need to know everything. Anyways. So in 1990, Grant serves in in Fayetteville, Arkansas Police Department. Okay, so now in 1990, he becomes a police officer. Now, he is fired in 1991 due to his poor performance. Then he goes on to serve a very short time in Huntsville, Arkansas Police Department, which lasted about 8 months. And then he gets fired from that one. He then moves on to Eureka Springs, Arkansas Police Department, and he's there from 1993 to 1996.
Do they not cross-reference that you've been to all these fucking police departments? I'm just throwing that shit out there.
I don't know. Well, these are small-ass towns, so maybe not.
Even more reason.
But maybe not. I mean, you figure it's the 90s. Computers were a thing, but not... I mean, think about it this way. Let me throw this out here. So I said 1993 to 1996, right? I was still in high school at that time. When I was a junior in high school, learned how to send an email. Like,
wow.
We had computers.
I learned how to send an email since I was like 10.
No, I will never forget it either because they brought us into like the computer lab. We had these brand new computers and they were like, okay, we're going to teach you guys how to do email. And I'm like, what the fuck is email? And then they made us
AOL.
They made us pick I think it was actually through AOL. But they made us have this they made us pick this email address, which I didn't understand. Then our thing was to type it in and then in the send box, type something and then type whatever and then send it. I left that class looking at my friend. I will never forget this because I looked at my friend. I was like, I don't even understand what we just did. And she was like, I know, I don't know. And I'm like, I don't even understand. He's saying that we gave him mail, but like, where's the fucking mail? Like, I could not wrap my brain around how you would electronically send a mail to somebody. And
I'm sitting here going, how the fuck do you send a letter again?
To make it even worse, after I graduated high school, I did not send an email until my son was born.
So 2003.
So 2003. And the reason why was because I did not understand how to send an email.
Email's about the second fucking thing I do. I do texting and emails.
I didn't understand it.
Oh my God.
Like I had to ask your dad, like, when I do this, like, what am I supposed to, I was so confused. So confused. I didn't even have an email address until 2003. Could you like that? And now
I had an email address when I got my first, like, not my first phone, because the first phone didn't have email address on there, but
I'm saying, like,
I bet you when I created my Facebook account.
It's crazy because I think back to that and go, oh my God, like, it's weird. So you figure in the 90s, they didn't have that electronic, easily able to check on people's references. And they're small towns, so most likely they were just like, oh, thank goodness we have somebody who wants to be a police officer. So they just like accept them, and they see on their resume that they've brought in that's on paper, which is so weird because your brother just had to finish a portfolio for his school, like one of his school projects for his upcoming career. And I struggled with that. I literally was like, I don't understand this. I don't understand what this portfolio thing is. And he's like, well, it's where I'm supposed to show all my work. Well, he has his own website now. So he has his own website where all of his stuff is going to be up. And I'm sitting here going, but I don't understand, like, what's the point? And your dad was like, no, portfolios.
Kind of like LinkedIn.
He's like, your portfolios are good because it showcases what you can do. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Some
like,
companies
in
will
my
look
brain,
at your LinkedIn,
yes.
and that's how they look at see what you've done.
Yes. And so in my brain, listen, technology and I are not friends. Like, not friends
that's
at
like
all.
my work. I have to do
can't
PDPs,
figure it out.
which is personal development plans, and those are...
I don't understand it. I don't know why I'm so stupid when it comes to it. But anyway, so that's probably why they didn't know that he had been fired for these other things. Now, he is fired from the Eureka Springs, Arkansas Police Department because he used excessive force and he falsified police reports when he worked there. Which, by the way, excessive force, fuck you, guy. Like, I'm just going to say that. I have such a problem with the fucking police officers that use excessive force because they think they're badass. Like, give me a break. So in January of 2016, so we're skipping forward 10 years because, like, in between this time of 1996 and 2016, he's kind of gone through all kinds of different, like, things, right? So he had served as a corrections officer at one point, which, okay, I mean, that makes sense. Police officers, correction officers, okay. He ended up serving 2 terms as the Benton County District 1 constable. He served from 2009 to 2010 and then 2013 to 2014. So he's kind of like he stays in the police career. He just jumps around to different jobs, right? Well, in 2016, he's actually appointed as the police chief in Gateway, Arkansas. Gateway, when I was watching the documentary, they show somebody driving into Gateway, and I'm pretty sure the population said like 550 people. Like, it's a very, very tiny ass town. Now, he actually resigns from this position, this chief of police position, 4 months into his job because he had some issues. He had some issues with with one of the lieutenants from the Benton County Sheriff's Office, to the point where this led to him and this other person getting into each other's faces, which is not a good look for a chief of police. He also had issues with a man named James Appleton about fixing his police car. And so he got into some, like, not really altercations, but not being a nice person. So this actually ends up with the city council basically going to Grant and saying, okay, here's your ultimatum. Either you quit or we fire you. Your choice. And so he's like, okay, I'll quit. So he resigns. After he resigns from the police department, he's like, doesn't have a job. Like, he struggles he's in between jobs. He can't find one or hold one or keep one because he had been, I guess, upset. I don't fucking know. So on February 23rd, 2017, James Appleton, remember James? I just told you he got into arguments with the dude about the police car. So James Appleton is driving down the road towards his home, and he's talking on the phone to his brother-in-law. And he ends up pulling over on the side of the road, and he tells his brother-in-law, like, hey, I'm going to pull over because if I keep driving, I'm going to lose service, and I want to finish this conversation. He's sitting on the side of the road on the phone, and he sees a white car pull up behind him, and he tells his brother-in-law, like, this white car just pulled up behind me, and it's just sitting there. And he's like, and I'm like, I don't know, like, well, this is kind of strange, but whatever. Now, after a little bit, the car ends up pulling up next to James's truck, then proceeds to fire a bullet through the window of the truck. and then takes off. Now, a man named John Bray had actually driven by literally like a couple seconds before this happened. And what he said was that he saw James pulled over on the side there. He saw James in his truck. He's driving down the road. He sees James on the phone. And then he sees this white car that's behind James. And the white car that's behind James is like waving him on, like just keep going type thing. Because obviously in a small town, you might pull over and be like, hey, do you need help?
Right.
So he waves him on. And so he's like, okay. So he said, so I drove by, looked at that car, saw that person, and just started driving away. And he said that within a few seconds of that, he hears what he thought was a gunshot. And he was like, that's really weird. And he said then he sees the white car that he had just passed drive past him and head towards his house. And so he's like, what the fuck? So he's like, I'm just going to go check and make sure it's okay. So he flips a bitch and goes back. Said that when he pulls up next to the truck and it's very evident that he's been shot in the head and he's most likely dead. So he calls 911. And by the way, it's really sad to watch the documentary because the guy is like visibly upset by this because these are people, they all know each other. It's a fucking town of 500 people. Like, you know, everybody. So police obviously begin to investigate what happened. They realize that John is dead. They realize that I apologize. John is the man who's talking. James is the man who was murdered. I apologize. So he pulls back up to James's truck. John's talking to the police now. And they're kind of like, okay, well, what made you come by here? And he's like, and he tells them a story about how he saw James in his truck and he saw the white car behind him and he heard what he thought was a gunshot. So he turned back around to check on James. And that's basically what happened. And they're like, okay, so quick question. Did you see the make model, whatever, of this white vehicle? And he said, yes. And they said, do you know who this person is? And he said, yes. And then they said, well, who is? And he goes, well, he lives right over there. And they said, do you know what his name is? And he said, yes. And they said, what's his name? And he said, Grant Hardin. So they're like ex-police chief Grant Hardin. Like, you sure we're talking about the same guy? And he's like, yeah, that's who it is. That evening, Grant actually takes his wife and daughter to dinner. And his daughter does actually say that like he was acting relatively normal. But while they were at dinner, he just kept reminding them like how much he loved them and that he cared about them. And she said that was a little strange. But in the middle of eating dinner at the restaurant, the police show up and arrest Grant for the murder of James. Now, police end up searching his home and his vehicle, and they do find more evidence, which totally points the finger that Grant had killed James Appleton. Grant is charged with capital murder. So what they think actually happened, I'm going to go into that first. So what the police actually think happened was on that specific day, his wife had said, like they interviewed his wife and his daughter and everything. And his wife had said that she and her daughter were inside the home and Grant was outside doing like yard work. And what they think happened is they think that James drove by and Grant saw him drive by and Grant was pissed at him for whatever reason, because then Grant pops his head into the door and says to his wife, like, hey, you guys need to get ready. I'd like to take you guys out to dinner. No rush. I'll be back, and leaves. And she says, I literally hear him get in his car and I hear him leave. I hear him drive down the driveway. 10 minutes later, he comes back. So he was only gone for like 10 minutes. So what they think it is they think that he saw James drive by in his truck and he jumped in his car, literally basically to go kill him or do something of the sort. I don't know. So they think that he then jumped in his car, followed him. When he pulled over, he pulled up behind him, sat for a few minutes. Dude, the John guy drives by. After John drives by, he pulls up next to James, shoots James, and then goes back home. That's kind of what it sounds like. And then his wife is like, yeah, when he came back, he was like, are you guys ready? Like, let's go to dinner. And so by the time the police had gone to arrest him at his house, he was at dinner. And, that's how they think that this happened. Now, in October of 2017, Grant actually pleads guilty to the first degree murder of James Appleton. And he receives 30 years in prison with 10 years suspended. Now, unfortunately, to this day, the motive for this murder is not known. Like, he's never come out and said, like, I hated this guy so much that I killed him. Like, he doesn't have an actual motive, which is so strange to me because it's like, why?
Right.
You had some scuffs with this guy and that's cause for murder. Okay. Now, Grant is actually taken to North Central Unit Prison in Calico Rock, Arkansas. Well, during his incarceration, DNA is collected from Grant. And this actually leads to a hit on an unsolved rape case. So in November of 1997, Amy Harrison, who is a school teacher at Frank Tillery Elementary, she's actually preparing lessons for her upcoming week. It's a Sunday. There's a church that uses like the gym or the cafeteria of the school for their church. So she's kind of like, puts herself in like the classroom and just kind of quietly is preparing for her upcoming lessons. Now she goes to the teacher's lounge to use the bathroom. And when she comes out, there's a man that's standing there pointing a gun at her. He molests and rapes her in 2 different rooms in the building. And she described him as wearing a stocking cap with sunglasses and no shoes. And so she was saying that she literally could only see his nose and his mouth because of how he looked. But she did think it was very odd that he had no shoes on and his socks were dirty. But like, why he had no shoes on, nobody knows.
Right.
Now, she also noticed during this whole time that he was extremely careful not to touch any of the surfaces in the rooms. And because she was a cop's wife, honestly, I think that had something to do with her attention to detail, because I don't know what anybody would do in that moment. But in that moment for her, she's got a gun in her face. This man is basically telling her to do sexual things to him and then turns around and rapes her in a different room. And in her mind, all she's thinking is, I need to survive this, and I need to remember everything that I possibly can to tell the police. So she's able to remember as many details as possible. When everything is said and done, she ends up finding somebody in the school. It was either a custodian or like a cafeteria worker or something who basically came across her, and she's like crying, and he immediately calls 911 for her. So they end up talking to her. She reports the rape. And of course, as soon as she reports who she is, like cops are out there. Like they're there because she's a cop's wife. They wanted to do everything they could to solve this case because she was a cop's wife. Now they do start to have suspicions after interviewing her and after collecting evidence and finding out how and, what the actions were that happened. They start to think that this is somebody who at least at minimum works in law enforcement, if not could be a police officer, because the way the attack happened, the fact that he wouldn't touch surfaces, the fact that he didn't have shoes on, right? Like these shoes, for instance, would leave shoe prints, right?
Shoe size.
Socks are a little bit harder, and socks aren't going to leave prints of things like that. And the fact that he had asked her, I guess, at one point, do you recognize my voice? As if she knew who he was. And she said, I sat there and tried to replay his voice in my mind so many times to see if I recognized him for any reason. I just didn't. And she goes, and I kept telling him like, no, I don't. And she's like, he almost tried. It's like, I kept thinking that I was supposed to know who he was. Mm-hmm. And so they took all this information and they searched and searched and searched. And there was literally like no DNA except for at one point. This is very TMI, but I'm just going to tell you the way it is. At one point during this whole process, there was some sort of something, we all know what it is, that was like on her leg. And as a normal person would, if something's dripping down your arm, your face, you're going to wipe it away. So that's what she did. Well, when she did that, what she didn't realize is it was his semen. And she actually wiped it off her leg and wiped it across her stomach. And she said that when she did that, he immediately looked at her and said, what are you doing? Why would you do that? But I don't think he realized that there was anything. And so they were able to collect DNA evidence off of that sample off of her stomach. And so they got a solid DNA sample. They put it into CODIS. They put it into all the things that you would need to put it into, and literally nothing came up. I am going to right now say I do not know why there's a statute of limitations on rape. I will never understand why we would limit the time frame that somebody can report being assaulted, raped, sexually assaulted, molested. I don't know, especially
those are such traumatizing
exactly
events.
They're so traumatizing. And to be honest with you, molestation in particular, which is typically of children, a child is not going to even be able to comprehend sometimes what happened to them until they're a full-fledged adult. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you can't go back and press charges on somebody, I will never understand that. However, good on this police officer. So this police officer who is investigating this, because he's like fully invested in this, he is worried about exactly that. He's like, there's this DNA sample. We have a solid ass sample, but we just don't have anybody to connect it to right now. That does not mean 10 years down the road we won't find somebody. And so what he does is he actually he issues what's called a special John Doe warrant in the year 2000. So basically 3 years after this happens, he issues a special John Doe warrant. Now, apparently what this is a warrant for a John Doe. So it's no longer a statute of limitations. It's a warrant. You have a warrant out for John Doe of this DNA. And basically what it's saying is when we find the person who matches this DNA, they will be charged for sexual assault. They will be charged for rape, whatever. And he said, the reason I opened up the special warrant is because I was afraid we weren't going to get the person in a time enough fashion that then her statute of limitations.
Well, especially if they had the suspicion that person worked in law enforcement or of some sort.
Yes. Now, what this also does is it makes it to where you can't appeal the arrest of somebody due to statute of limitations. So when somebody gets caught with this DNA, if it matches, they cannot come back and go, oh, well, the statute of limitations was up on that rape charge because there's been a warrant out for that person's arrest since 2000. Tell me that's not fucking genius.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we doing that for every rape victim? Like, why are we not putting out when they come forward? Why are we not doing that for the people who come forward right away? Not people who come forward like 7 years later. I'm talking about people who come forward right away where we don't know, but there's DNA samples. Why are we not doing that for everybody so that these people do get arrested? Also, how about we just take away the statute of limitations? That just sounds like the better idea. But anyways, I digress. So in April of 2018, Grant's DNA is run into CODIS because it gets put into CODIS, and they run these against, honestly, I think they put his DNA and said, does this man have any other fucking and ding ding, it matches to a T to this rape from 1997. And now he's got the John Doe DNA unsolved case, and now he's got a warrant now for him to be arrested on that. So he's actually charged with three counts of rape, 1 count of kidnapping, and 1 count of sexual abuse, and he pleads not guilty to all of them. Then February 7th of 2019, he actually ends up pleading guilty to 1 count of rape in Benton County, and he is sentenced to 25 years in prison. So and then in April of 2019, he actually tries to pull back his guilty plea. Like, he actually goes forward and says, I actually don't want to plead guilty anymore. And they're like, too fucking bad, bro.
Yeah, no shit.
And so they denied it. So if you're doing the math as it sits, he is sentenced to 55 years with 10 years suspended. So total, I think, actually was 55 years with 10 years suspended. So he'd spend 45 years in prison, minimum, supposedly, for the 2 crimes. Now we hop on to May 25th, 2025. Grant Hardin actually escapes from the North Central Unit prison. Now, this was discovered when Grant did not show up to the normal ass head count that they do like every day for prison, which they found out later was about 15 to 20 minutes after he escaped, right? So he had a 15 to 20 minute head start. Now they start to review cameras because when they realize he's not there, immediately first thing you do is you go to the cameras because these are fucking prisons. They have cameras everywhere. And they discover that Grant had actually walked out of prison. Literally walked out, basically in disguise, of prison. He was wearing a makeshift law enforcement outfit, not a prison guard uniform, but like an outfit that you would think of like a police officer would be wearing.
Okay.
Now, he basically impersonates a police officer to leave, and he talks to a guard. This shit blows my fucking mind. He talks to a guard, and he's basically striking up like a small conversation with this guard, presents himself as a police officer. Obviously, he knows how to fucking talk like a police officer. He has been one. And the guard actually, who is controlling the gate, mistakes him as a officer and opens the door and lets him out.
You didn't even ask for identification, bruh?
No!
You should be fired.
I'm like, what are we talking about? So here's what's crazy though. I think they're going to find some shit out. I think somebody helped him that was a police officer because he was wearing black pants, a black shirt, a black t-shirt, a black baseball cap. First of all, that's not what they wear in prison. So where'd you get all the black clothes from? Number one, because you got prison uniforms, bro. Okay. And he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Well, where the fuck are you getting a bulletproof vest from? Where the fuck? You're not just hiding that. What are you doing? Somebody brought that shit to you. Where the fuck did you get that from? Right? So, and he also, and there's actually video, you can see it. He really does look like a straight up fucking police officer. He walks out also while he's walking out. He's actually wheeling with him a cart that has some boxes and like some wood in it. So, really, he looks like he belongs there to be working, right? Which again, identification, ma'am, sir, ma'am. Because even like I think about like when you go to fly on a plane, you go through security checkpoints. We all go through security checkpoints, including the pilots, the flight attendants. They have to go through a fucking security checkpoint. They got to scan their fucking badge, fingerprint their fucking asses just to get through to go to their plane. Why are we not having that same set of rules for people coming in and out of prison that are supposed to be officers? That should have been very simple. A badge, scan your badge to let you in and out. Like, what are we doing here? Now, immediately they realize fucking A, he's gone. So they start searching for him. But there was like heavy ass rainfall. And so it made it really hard for the sniffy dogs to sniff him out. So they would bring out these canines and they would start to get a scent. The canines would sniff and start bringing them. And then all of a sudden there'd be like a downpour and they're like, yeah, I don't smell shit, obviously. So they actually used canines, drones, and helicopters to try to find this guy. Their big thought was that he was using one of the 300 to 400 caves that are there that are in the Ozark area to hide in. There's all these caves apparently in the area. And they were like, the problem is we just don't have enough fucking people to search all the caves in one day. So like we could search half of them and then go to the other half. But by that time he could be moving somewhere else. So their fear was that. They also had fears that he had already escaped to like Missouri because he had a 15-minute head start. And then the downfall, the rain pour, that gives him the freedom to move without the dogs being able to catch his scent. So they put out a $10,000 reward. And then a couple days later, they doubled it to $20,000. And then it increased again on June 2nd for $25,000, which again, he escapes prison on May 25th. So on June 2nd, he's still gone. They're now offering $25,000 reward for tips leading to his arrest. They got a lot of tips actually from other states of people that are like, oh, we're pretty sure we saw him. They pulled out all the stops to find this guy, which I think is probably a good thing because 1, he is an ex-police officer. 2, he did 2 crimes and one of them killing a man without having a real fucking reason. That makes him pretty dangerous. Multiple states were looking for him. Multiple agencies are now in Arkansas trying to assist finding this guy. Then on June 6th of 2025, so literally just a couple weeks ago, the police announced that they found and captured Grant Hardin in the woods of Moccasin Creek, which is actually only 1.5 miles from the prison. So he only made it 1.5 miles in 2 weeks.
What the fuck? Bruh.
They actually think that
he probably was just chilling.
Well, what they think is, one, I'm sitting here going, he probably was hiding out in the caves then. Like if there's caves in the area to like whatever. But they actually think it was because of the rainfalls. And they said because the rain was so heavy that it would actually like like the water, like the rivers and creeks and shit would get really high. So what they think happened is that he went into the woods, but there's like water and shit that runs through the woods. And they're thinking that they got so high that he couldn't move. So he'd have to wait it out a couple days. But then by the time he was ready to go, the dogs were back out and the drones were out and the helicopters were out. So he's like hiding and they can't find him. And so they actually a sniffer dog for the win. I don't know what they're really called. Sniffer dogs. I'm calling them sniffer dogs. Yeah, see, you don't know what they're called.
Units?
I want to call them cadaver dogs, but they're not Yeah, okay.
They're probably just called the canine unit.
I like sniffer dog better. So a dog sniffed him out. A dog actually picked up his scent and actually led them into the bushes where he is.
That dog better have gotten a party.
Oh, hell yeah. They get
Puppuccinos galore.
Oh, yeah. So Grant was rearrested and he has now been transferred to the Varner unit, which is a high security supermax prison in Varner, Arkansas, which makes sense because if you escape, bitch, you probably should never. And you want to know something crazy? Is I went and looked at the Varner unit. That's where they house like death row people and stuff too, like people on death row. But what's crazy is on their website, they actually have like an escapees, and I clicked on it. They actually have somebody who escaped in like 2021, and I'm like, what kind of a prison are you people? Why do you have so many people escaping? Like one is too many, and now for sure you've had at least 2. Like what are we talking about? So right now he's currently 58 years old, and he still has 50 years left to serve his sentence. So he'd be 108.
So he'll die in prison.
But that's not even including, they're going to charge him for escaping. They have their charge that they put on him was second degree escape or something. So he's going to have more added on to his sentence.
Which I get, but he's going to be dead anyway.
If they can keep his ass in prison. If they can keep his ass in prison because he fucking escaped. So my thing is, in my opinion, this man should be staying at the super maximum security prison for the rest of his life. Because he
probably will.
Because he's an escape artist at this point.
And that's if he even makes it in jail. Because if once they find out he's a cop.
The thing is, that's what's crazy to me is like, well, how'd they keep him alive before? Did they have him like in a special unit? Because you're right. People who go to jail that are police.
You're at the prison with the big dogs, the scary people.
Yeah, but
bruh.
super maxes. So your dad and I did an episode where a serial killer was held in a super max. And a super max prison is...
Like an Alcatraz?
It's, well, no, because Alcatraz, they had more freedom at Alcatraz, actually, than a Supermax prison. So in a Supermax prison, you're in your cell for 23. You're in your cell for 23 out of 24 hours a day. However.
So it's basically like solitary?
Nope, it's worse. So you're by yourself. You're locked in a cell by yourself for 23 out of the 24 hours. And then when you go somewhere, like if you're going to go to like outside or go to the shower, you are shackled by your hands and your feet, shackled, and you are escorted by a corrections officer to and from the places that you're going, and you are never allowed to go anywhere by yourself. And you can only go by yourself 1 hour out of the day. And most of the time you're going by yourself, it's to go out in the yard where you can go outside and you're by yourself, or like in cages by yourself outside. You are not allowed to have contact with other prisoners.
Weird.
So it's like the most loneliest life. But
man, but that means he's safe. That's bullshit.
I mean, yes, I understand that, but you know, that kind of people, okay, I'm going to just say this. People say that when you get put in places like, because the thing with solitary is awful, but you eventually come out of solitary. Supermax, that's your life. And when you're in solitary, you don't come out, actually. When you're in solitary, you stay there, but you're not like shackled and taken places. Like, he's not allowed to leave his cell without being hands and feet shackled, where he has to like shuffle everywhere that he goes. And he has to have at least one corrections officer with him at all times if he's going somewhere, and all of his food is served to him in the thing. I don't even think I don't know if they have TVs or anything like that. My guess would be they don't, because they're supposed, it's supposed to be really the highest punishment. But people say that when you live your life like that, like when you go to prison like that, they talk about how that can be so mentally draining on somebody, and it can make you go crazy. I beg to differ, because I feel like I could thrive. I'm such an introvert that I'm like, I could live that life. I could be by myself all the time. That would not bother me one bit. I'd be like, thank you, freedom. Like, my head would be great. Although I say that, but I've never lived that life, obviously. But there is a thing called death row syndrome. And death row syndrome is when you are living on death row, because on death row, you are only allowed out of your cell 1 hour a day as well. However, in death row, you're in a row of cells with a bunch of other people. But they talk about how if somebody's on death row, but living on death row for a long time, it can mentally fuck them up, because they basically are isolated from the world. And that's that is truthfully, truth be told, that is a way to mentally fuck somebody up, is you withhold them from the world. Why do you think people who kidnap, why do they lock people in rooms and basements? Because it tears you down to where you just give up, right? That's kind of what they're saying would happen in that scenario. But I will say this other thing. Again, I already talked about it a little bit, but the documentary Devil in the Ozarks is actually really pretty good. It's only about 45 minutes. It's one thing. I watched it. If you're interested in anything about this case, I highly recommend you watch it, because it tells you not about his escape, but the thing that was hard about this guy is because he literally just escaped. That's all the information that kept popping up. I had to dig. So for those of you who know how to like Google, right? We Google. When you Google, like the first page is always like the most relevant shit. I had to go to page 8 of Google to find the shit about these, to find the shit about his past crimes. So the first 7 pages of Google were all about his escape and his capture. And okay, great. I wanted to know the other shit. And so I literally was like, oh my gosh. So I watched the documentary because the documentary focuses on his previous crimes, which is what I was most interested in, because the escape is okay, but why was he in jail in the first place? Why are we going to talk about his escape if we don't talk about what he did? And that's also why I don't have a ton of background information, because I was already on page 8 of Google, and I was not going to keep going like page 10, 12, 15, because then you start getting some weird ass shit, and I don't want to be part of that. So, because like, I'm not trying to dig that deep. So anyways, this was the story of Grant Hardin, the police chief who murdered and raped 2 people, basically, over a period of time, and turned out to be a complete asshole, and then escaped from prison, but thankfully got caught. So if you like the things that you're hearing, and if you heard Olive snoring, that sometimes is included, make sure you're following us, and make sure that you go to all of our socials and, you know, just do the thing like always. I don't think I need to repeat myself every single time, but for some reason I feel like I do. So I think I'm just going to actually stop here and say thank you for listening and hearing about Grant Hardin. For now, catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.